What is going on, friends? Thank you for joining us on this late night sports from the couch here on the Mercado Airwaves Network. We are here live in the Mercado Airwaves studio. We want to thank you guys so much for joining us on this episode. So we got a lot of things we got to get into tonight, so we'll get right into it. We want to get an update into this Russell Westbrook story that we talked about in the last episode of Sports from the Couch. We have a statement now from the Utah Jazz and the NBA. We'll start off with the Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz and Larry H. Miller Group announced today a permanent ban of the fan who engaged in an inappropriate interaction with the Oklahoma City Thunder's Russell Westbrook last night at Vivint Smart Home Arena. The ban is effective immediately and includes all arena events. The organization conducted an investigation through video review and eyewitness accounts. The ban is based on excessive and derogatory verbal abuse directed at a player during the game that violated the NBA Code of Conduct. The Utah Jazz will not tolerate fans who act inappropriately. There is no place in our game for personal attacks or disrespect. Quote, everyone deserves the opportunity to enjoy and play the game in a safe, positive, and inclusive environment, said Steve Starks, president of the Utah Jazz. Offensive and abusive behavior does not reflect the values of the Miller family or organization and the community. We all have responsibility to respect the game of basketball and, more importantly, each and other as human beings. This has always been a hallmark of our incredible fan base and should forever be our standard moving forward. And Russell Westbrook was fined for threatening Jazz fans, and the fans' wife, Oklahoma City Thunder star Russell Westbrook, has been fined $25,000 for directing profanity and threatening language to a fan. The NBA announced Tuesday afternoon the incident occurred during Monday night's game between the Thunder and the Jazz in Utah. So there we go. The fallout has happened. Excuse the camera, guys. The fallout has happened. We now know that Russell Westbrook won't get suspended. We'll have a fine of $25,000. And we do now know that the fan in this interaction will be banned from Utah Jazz games and all the stuff, concerts, rodeos, whatever else they do in that arena. But you know, it just goes to show, we mentioned it on the last episode, and I want to thank you guys so much for being so awesome and so interactive on that episode, but this idea that fans could just get away with whatever they want. You know, I understand, like, I think I might have been a little too lenient on Russ in the sense of, you know, you probably shouldn't say the things you did say. You probably could have gone into team security to do something. I get it. But, like, I think there should be more accountability from the Utah Jazz or the team security. You know, we're talking about organizations that have billions of dollars, that pay these players millions of dollars. They should, at the very least, have some form of security that, at the very least, has their ear and eyes on things. I'm not saying to, like, just randomly kick out people and be like, I don't like the way that guy's giving me the stink eye, or he booed me too loud. But, like, you know, if somebody's saying to another grown man, get on your knees like you deserve, and throwing racial profiling and slurs to somebody, then you have enough money to invest in really good security, I think. Personally, it's $1 billion organization. But I think this was something else that we mentioned on the last episode, was they were going to do an investigation. And this isn't like even the early 2000s and the 90s and the 80s where it was all hearsay. There's going to be evidence. People are always on their phone. There's 20,000 people in that arena. And it's always go, what's the road with less obstruction? It's the way I like to do things, where follow the money and which is the easiest path to get there. And to me, it just seemed like what seemed to be more prevalent, what was more likely to happen in that case. So at least now we do know what the fallout of this situation is, and I wonder what we're going to have moving forward. I wonder if this coming up offseason, if the NBA and the union and the owners get together with the stadiums themselves and they just tighten up security. You know, I know you want to get every dollar you can, and those floor seats are expensive and those courtside seats are expensive and they bring in a lot of revenue, but, you know, maybe we need a little bit more room. You know, we're on top of these players. It's the only sport that we're right on top of them. I mean, baseball too, but there is that gap. You know, they have the dugouts and, you know, you have all that yardage before you get to the outfield. So it's interesting by the NBA. And, you know, we saw that fight with Serge Ibaka. And it's the thing about the NBA is everything's so much more visceral in the NBA because first of all, they're just so much bigger than normal people. And we were talking about giants, huge men, right? But on top of that, they're the only sport where we see the guys. We see the NBA player. We see Russell Westbrook. We see LeBron James. We see Kawhi Leonard. You name the star, we see their face. You don't see the face of Mike Trout. I mean, you do, but there's a ball cap. There's a helmet. They're underneath all this armor when they're at plate. Obviously, in the NFL, you don't see the guys. You see them in press conferences or when they're on the sidelines with their helmets off. But the NBA is the only sport where you're, at least in the United States, the major sports, where you're constantly seeing their face, no obstructions. And again, part of the reason the NBA is so big is because we have that connection. We buy their clothing, or at least, hardcore fans love to wonder what Karl Anthony Towns or Ben Simmons, what they're wearing, and then they go out and buy the same thing. It's just much more visceral. We're much more connected to NBA players. So that's why I think whenever you see an altercation like this, it hits the public so much harder. And then you add the racial part to it. I mean, you can't ignore the fact that these are giant black men. And it's easy to spin it and to write this narrative that they're scary and that they're dangerous to fans and everything, because it's an easy narrative for certain demographics to use. And you have to look past it. And that's what I said about this story. I was not just going to go in when we first did the Sports from the Couch yesterday. I wasn't just going to go in on the fan just because everybody else was. But when you actually dig deep into it and you just kind of know the way things are, I'm just glad that they actually reacted this way. I thought everybody was going to pretty much stay quiet and just kind of let it go. But, good on everybody to at least nip it in the bud. So that's the update. We'll see what else happens the rest of the way through. But for all you guys watching right now, Russell Westbrook actually on ESPN had another triple-double, so the dude is on fire. But there it is. We have our verdict on the Russell Westbrook and Utah Jazz fan incident. The Utah Jazz fan will be banned for life, and Russell Westbrook will be fined $25,000. But we're here also because of the big news. Odell Beckham Jr. is now a Cleveland Brown. Le'Veon Bell is now a New York Jet. And the NFL free agency tampering, it's not even official. This is all just the legal tampering window, which I think is an oxymoron, isn't it? Like, it can't be legal and tampering at the same time. But it's the NFL. They can do whatever they want. But we do know Nick Foles has signed a deal with the Jacksonville Jaguars, 4 years, $88 million, which also does mean Blake Bortles was released. So the Blake Bortles era is over in Jacksonville. And all hail Nick Foles for all you Jags fans. And Tyrod Taylor signs a 2-year deal with the LA Chargers. We're also hearing Teddy Bridgewater was going to stick around with New Orleans, but he's now taking meetings with the Miami Dolphins. They're offering him more money, apparently, and a starting position job. So be interesting to see if he decides to stay behind and back up Drew Brees and have Sean Payton as his coach, and maybe just a certain situation comes up and you just never know. But obviously, we also want to get into some of the big news with Le'Veon Bell signing a 4-year, $52.5 million deal with the Jets. And, it's interesting because some people are saying that he left more money on the table. And at the end of the day, you're going to be able to make an argument on whether it was a good idea or a bad idea. That's just the day and age we live in, where people are going to plant their flag on something. But the truth of the matter is, he thinks he won in this deal. And he's a 27-year-old running back in his prime that's going to the Jets. That's pretty big. And leave it only in New York City. Will the Jets signing a prime-time future Hall of Famer in Le'Veon Bell, and it is the understory because of what the Giants did with Odell. I mean, go figure. But I think it's a good move. I honestly would have loved to have seen the Bears get him. That was one of those moves where if you're looking for, because the Bears couldn't get Kareem Hunt, and obviously, whatever your opinion is of Kareem Hunt, understandable. Take morals out of it. Take whatever social idea you have of it, specifically just as a player, and how he fits into the scheme with Matt Nagy and what the Bears' offense would be, being an extra weapon for Mitchell Trubisky, would have been a really good signing in that standpoint. They didn't have that, and Le'Veon Bell is that exact type of player. Would have loved to have had him in this offense. Now to see what he could do with Sam Darnold with the Jets, it's going to be interesting. And, is this the moment? Do they feel like right now it's time to get the Patriots? Do they have the Patriots' attention now? That's what I want to know. So very interesting that Kareem Hunt signed a 1-year deal with Cleveland a few weeks ago. We know that now. And obviously now having Odell Beckham Jr. and Baker Mayfield, that team is looking pretty interesting. Tevin Coleman signed a 2-year deal worth $10 million with the San Francisco 49ers. Interesting to see that one. I thought Tevin Coleman would have found this way on the Bears. I thought that was going to be the kind of level that they were going to want, but we'll find out where they spend some of their money in just a little bit. Mark Ingram signed a 3-year, $15 million deal with the Baltimore Ravens, and this division is very interesting. We're seeing what's happened. We're going to get to the odds in just a little bit, but you have the Browns who are making all these moves, and we know about the window. The window of having a rookie quarterback and having his contract manageable, right? And we also understand how important it is to win in that window. We saw it with Seattle. We're seeing it with the Rams, and we're seeing it with the Bears. We're seeing it with a lot of these teams. And now you're trying to see with Baker is if you can win with a young quarterback and pay the guys around him, you have a chance to really stack your team up. And I wonder if that's what's happening in the AFC North. I mean, do you really think Cincinnati's going to go anywhere? Andy Dalton and older A.J. Green? I don't know, right? Pittsburgh is in total turmoil. I mean, you got Ben Roethlisberger. You got to give him something there. Like, I don't necessarily like him, but you have to give him the dude deserves the respect that he deserves as a future Hall of Fame quarterback, right? Baltimore? I mean, they've lost Terrell Suggs. They've I'm spacing on the defensive player that they just lost. Give me 1 second. I'll look him up in just a second. But you're looking at a division that has kind of depleted itself. Pittsburgh has its own implosion. Baltimore getting rid of Joe Flacco. They did obviously sign Mark Ingram and having Lamar Jackson, who had that incident. I don't know if you guys saw on TMZ that he was recording himself driving and he had 108 driving. Again, I'm not some prude or anything, but if you're a starting NFL quarterback, it's not the best optics. You just got to be a little bit smarter than Lamar, but I'm not mad at you. But, I wonder if Baltimore thinks that they can do this now. I definitely looks like Cleveland thinks they can win the division now. Who would have thought that 2 weeks ago, that the Cleveland Browns would be the favorite out of the AFC North? And we'll get into maybe the overhype of this team in just a little bit, but it's pretty interesting that we've gotten that far in just 2 weeks. And just goes to show how fast the turnaround is in the National Football League. But also, just kind of wrapping up a little bit of the running backs. Latavius Murray signs a 4-year deal, $14 million with New Orleans, obviously after Mark Ingram is gone. Adrian Peterson re-signs with the Washington Redskins, 2 years, $8 million. Mike Davis signs a 2-year, $6 million deal with the Chicago Bears, and it's more of just a backup position. That talk about whether Jordan Howard's on the trading block. What are you going to get for him? And I guess my real question about Jordan Howard and this Bears running game in general is whether Matt Nagy is that type of coach. We've seen in that 1 year that he was the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs, even though Andy Reid really is, but he was calling plays, especially in that playoff game. He forgot about Kareem Hunt. He lost that game. We saw what's happened throughout most of last season. They lost Jordan Howard. Where was he? And it played out pretty big in the playoff game. Speaking of the Bears playoff, Cody Parkey officially has been released from the Chicago Bears. So it's going to be interesting to see how Mike Davis fits into this running game and whether that means Jordan Howard is going to stick around and whether they're going to try to draft a running back with their first pick in the draft that is in the 3rd round. And obviously, just really fast, Devin Funchess signs a 1-year deal with Indianapolis. Indy, by the way, who has a lot of money, really hasn't done anything. Really surprised that they didn't go after Le'Veon Bell. Jamison Crowder signs a 3-year deal with the New York Jets for $28.5 million. Adam Humphrey signs a 4-year, $36 million with Tennessee after a breakout season in Tampa Bay. Tyrell Williams signs a 4-year deal, $44 million with Oakland to team up with new Raider Antonio Brown. John Brown signs a 3-year, $27 million with Buffalo. One of those cats that, if he stays healthy, was a really good weapon in Arizona and in Baltimore. So, that's a solid pickup right there. Larry Fitzgerald, the great, re-signs a 1-year deal, $11 million deal with the Arizona Cardinals. But here is some interesting ones really fast. How about Cole Beasley? 4-year deal, $29 million with Buffalo. Buffalo trying to do something. And I wonder how much it has to do, obviously, with their young quarterback. But he showed when he was healthy that he could. he actually almost won us a fantasy football championship, but it's one of those things where the NFL, it goes right back into your window. And with somebody like Josh Allen from Buffalo, trying to get him some weapons, and obviously him being a mobile quarterback, your window's only so open until he does get hurt. So, and finally, we'll get into this, one of the last two big ones in the NFC North, starting off with Danny Amendola signing a 1-year, $4.5 million with Detroit. The Lions trying to beat the New England Patriots of the NFC North. And the Chicago Bears get their wide receiver signing Cordell Patterson to a 2-year, $10 million deal. One of the best kick returners in the NFL, and speedster is going to be interesting to see. Just another weapon for Mitchell Trubisky, and that's what we've been talking about, is these young quarterbacks trying to strike while they're young, while their contracts are manageable, and giving them as many weapons as you can. So some interesting stuff in the NFL. We'll obviously keep our ears and eyes on everything that comes through the wire. But with all these moves, there are new Super Bowl odds. So I'm gonna name a couple teams for you, okay? Chicago Bears, Indianapolis Colts, LA Chargers, Minnesota Vikings, Philadelphia Eagles, Houston Texans, Seattle Seahawks, Atlanta Falcons. You know what those 8 teams have in common? That the Cleveland Browns have better odds of winning the Super Bowl than they do. That is right. After the Odell Beckham trade, the Cleveland Browns are now 14-1 odds to win the Super Bowl. You know who they're tied with? Who Vegas thinks has just as good at odds? The Green Bay Packers, who obviously signed Adrian Amos, for all those who missed it on the last episode of Sports from the Couch. But that's right. Adrian Amos is a Green Bay Packer, and Green Bay is trying to. That was not acceptable what happened this past season. Green Bay, like that city, it's not going to allow the Bears to become the kings of the NFC North for years to come. Never. But it's interesting though. The Browns were the hipster pick this past season. People really did like them as the season went on. But they actually do have some talent. It's the thing, they only had to give up a first-round pick, a third-round pick, and Jabril Peppers for Odell Beckham. It's interesting, but we'll give you the rest of the odds leading up to it. They have the Kansas City Chiefs at 6-1 odds, New England at 6-1, the Rams at 8-1, the Saints at 8-1, the Packers 14-1, the Browns 14-1, Chicago Bears at 16-1, the Colts 16-1, the Chargers 16-1, the Cowboys 20-1, the Vikings 20-1, the Eagles 20-1, Houston 5-1. Seattle 25-1, Atlanta 30-1, and how about this? The Pittsburgh Steelers are at 30-1. Who would have thought that would be after just a crazy offseason? And I wonder what's going to happen to that team. That's a team that I've never seen go through this type of turmoil before. So some interesting stuff, guys, and locally, just to keep you guys up to date. The Chicago Blackhawks have beaten the Toronto Maple Leafs 5-4, and currently, as we are speaking, it is 61-61 Northwestern and Illinois in the Big Ten tournament. That is right. We are heading into March Madness. I will put up and post my NCAA bracket. Hopefully, I do better this year than I did last year. I won 2 years ago when I picked Villanova. Was that 2 years ago? I don't know. My memory sucks, but sure enough, that's where we're at. And also some last-minute baseball stuff. We are working on getting one of our friends of the show, Paul Shivari, onto the show to talk about it. But the man is busy, because if you don't know, shout out to our guy who is doing a bunch of political stuff at WCPT 8:20 a.m. Chicago. So we can't get Paulie on. We will do a baseball special leading into March 28th for the Cubs and White Sox. Also, before we let you guys go, we're giving away digital copies of Overlord and Instant Family, two really fun movies. A zombie movie, a family comedy. What else can you ask for on a Saturday or Friday night with everybody you love? So do us a favor, like, rate, review us anywhere you get your favorite podcast. Share this video and you will be entered to win digital copies of Overlord and Instant family. But I think that's it, guys. Thank you so much for joining us on this late night sports from the couch here on the Mercado Airwaves Network, a live video version of Sports from the Couch. We really appreciate you guys making us a part of your day. We will be back with you guys hopefully tomorrow to talk everything that is the world of sports. For everybody here at the Mercado Airwaves Network, thank you for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your night. I'm Mike Mercado.